Some underperforming, or at least under-the-radar movies go on to become classics. Think Blade Runner, The Shawshank Redemption, or The Thing. Others find themselves relegated to the dumping ground of memes, punchlines, internet obsessions, and somehow evolve into cult legends anyway. A movie bombs in theaters, gets roasted online, then 5 years later, people are calling it misunderstood genius. Entire fandoms now form around screenshots, TikTok edits, and jokes that outlive the actual movie. The internet didn't just change how we watch films, it changed how films survive. Back in the day, becoming a cult classic required effort. Real effort. You had to wander through a video store at 10:30 p.m. on a Friday, ignore the giant wall of new releases, and pick something with cover art that looked either incredibly cool or deeply suspicious. Usually both. That was the process. That's how movies like Donnie, Darko, The Big Lebowski, and Office Space slowly built fan bases. People discovered them by accident and then forced their friends to watch them. Cult classics spread like a virus, a very nerdy virus, but now a movie can become a cult classic because somebody clipped 12 seconds of it onto a TikTok with subway surfing gameplay underneath. That's the world we live in now, and honestly, I don't hate it. Because internet culture completely changed how cult classics are born, how they spread, and even what audiences decide deserves a second chance. We used to discover weird movies through midnight screenings and DVD bargain bins. Now we discover them through memes, reaction images, ironic fan edits, and somebody tweeting, "Wait, this movie kinda rules, actually." And the weirdest part, sometimes they're right. The internet has basically turned every movie release into a potential long-term social experiment. A movie can flop on Friday, get mocked on Saturday, become a meme by Tuesday, and 6 months later people are writing essays about how it was secretly misunderstood. We've compressed the entire cult classic timeline from 20 years into like 4 business days. Take Morbius. There may never be a better example of internet culture creating a fake but cult classic in real time. The movie comes out, critics hate it, audiences mostly shrug, then the internet collectively decides to pretend it's the greatest film ever made. Suddenly, everyone's saying, "It's Morbin time!" despite the phrase never actually appearing in the movie. Which honestly makes it even funnier. The meme became bigger than the actual film. Sony saw the memes and thought, wait, people love this? Then they re-released the movie into theaters, where it immediately bombed again. And that is maybe the funniest possible outcome in movie history. A studio got tricked by irony poisoning. But that whole situation says a lot about modern cult fandom. The audience is no longer passive. The audience now actively reshapes a movie's identity after release. Sometimes they redeem it. Sometimes they destroy it. Sometimes they turn it into a joke that completely eclipses the actual content. Which isn't something that's entirely new. Cult movies have always had irony attached to them. People loved The Room because it's bizarre. Midnight screenings of Rocky Horror Picture Show became interactive comedy events. But the internet massively accelerates that entire process and scales it globally overnight. You no longer need a local theater full of weirdos throwing spoons at the screen. Now you just need one viral tweet. And because of that, the definition of cult classic is getting blurrier every year. Traditionally, cult classics were movies that found devoted audiences despite commercial failure or mixed reception. But now a movie can become culturally immortal purely because people won't stop posting about it online. That's why movies like Jennifer's Body experienced such massive reevaluations. When it originally came out, the marketing completely misunderstood the movie. The studio tried selling it as, "Hey guys, Megan Fox is hot," which is technically true, but not exactly a full marketing strategy. Meanwhile, the actual film was this sharp horror comedy satire with genuinely clever writing from Diablo Cody. It underperformed, critics were divided, and for years it just kind of existed in this weird space. But then social media rediscovered it. Younger audiences revisited it. Video essays exploded. Suddenly people started recognizing what the movie was actually trying to do. Now it's considered one of the defining cult horror films of the 2000s. And that happens constantly now. The internet acts like a giant cultural recycling machine. Every movie is permanently available for reevaluation. That's a huge difference from older eras. If a movie bombed in 1987, there was a decent chance that it just disappeared. Maybe it resurfaced on cable at 2 a.m. Maybe a guy at the comic shop owned a VHS, but distribution was limited. A movie could genuinely vanish. Today, nothing disappears. Ever. Every movie exists in an eternal digital limbo waiting for rediscovery, which means audiences can continuously rewrite cinematic history. And sometimes they rewrite it in ways that make absolutely no sense. Like the recent resurgence of interest in Starship Troopers. For years, people misunderstood that movie completely, myself included. Some audiences thought it was dumb fascist propaganda instead of obvious satire, which is wild because the movie basically opens with "Would you like to know more?" and then immediately turns into a in-universe propaganda reel. Director Paul Verhoeven was not being subtle, but online discourse helped people revisit it through a different lens. Once clips spread online and people started discussing the satire more openly, the movie's reputation improved dramatically. The internet helped audiences collectively get the joke. On the other hand, internet culture can also flatten movies into one-dimensional memes. Entire films get reduced to a single screenshot or quote. Ask most people online about American Psycho, and there's a decent chance they immediately think of Sigma male edits with Christian Bale staring into the distance while funk music plays, which is fascinating because the movie itself is satirical, very satirical, but online culture has a habit of accidentally idolizing the exact characters movies are making fun of. Patrick Bateman became an aspirational grindset icon to people who apparently watched the film while checking emails. The same thing happened to Fight Club, a movie criticizing toxic masculinity and consumerism somehow became a motivational poster for guys who own 3 podcasts. Internet culture doesn't just reinterpret movies, sometimes it completely mutates them. You could even go as far as to say that memes may now be more powerful than reviews when it comes to long-term cultural impact. Think about how movies survive online because they're endlessly quotable. Shrek became immortal largely because the internet adopted it as collective nonsense mythology. Entire generations communicate through Shrek memes now. At some point, the movie stopped being just a movie and became a language. And you know what? That's kind of beautiful. Weird, but beautiful. The internet also changed cult fandom by making niche audiences easier to organize. In the past, if you loved something obscure, like some sci-fi film, finding fellow fans was difficult. You had forums if you were lucky, maybe a convention. Now, every obscure movie immediately gets a subreddit, a Discord server, fan wiki, TikTok community, and a 12-hour YouTube lore breakdown. A movie no longer needs mainstream success if it can dominate a niche online community. In fact, sometimes being niche actually helps. Internet audiences love feeling like they've discovered something overlooked. And that's part of why horror thrives online so well. Horror fans are basically digital archaeologists. They will find some strange, low-budget movie from 2008 with terrible lighting and go, "No guys, you don't understand. This is secretly incredible." And occasionally they are right. Movies like Lake Mungo and As Above, So Below gained much larger audiences years after release because horror communities kept recommending them online. Word of mouth became algorithmic. The algorithm itself is honestly one of the biggest forces shaping modern cult classics. Recommendation systems reward engagement, not necessarily quality, which means weird movies have a real advantage. If something is strange enough, people will post about it. If people post about it, the algorithm spreads it, and suddenly thousands of people are watching a movie specifically because everyone online said, you have to experience this train wreck. That's basically like how Cats became internet folklore. People weren't watching it because they expected greatness. They were watching it because the collective online reaction resembled a civilization witnessing an eclipse. And ironically, shared online mockery can sometimes create genuine affection over time. Audiences bond through communal viewing experiences, even ironic ones. That's why bad movie nights exploded online during streaming culture. Streaming itself completely transformed cult movie evolution too. Netflix, Hulu, and other platforms accidentally manufactured cult classics all the time because audiences binge watched based on curiosity and convenience instead of ticket prices. A theatrical flop can suddenly explode once it hits streaming. We've seen this happen repeatedly. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World? It underperformed in theaters, but became hugely influential through home viewing and internet fandom. The hyper-stylized editing, gaming references, and meme-ready dialogue were basically engineered for online culture before online culture fully caught up. Now, it feels completely natural. And that's another huge shift. Modern cult classics are increasingly designed with internet shareability in mind. Studios kind of understand meme culture now. Sometimes too much. You can always tell when a movie desperately wants to become a meme. The dialogue sounds engineered in a laboratory. Every line pauses for reaction GIF potential. It's the cinematic equivalent of a brand tweeting, "How do you do, fellow kids?" Authentic cult status can't really be forced. Audiences smell desperation immediately. That's why genuinely strange movies still stand out. Internet audiences respond to sincerity and chaos far more than calculated viral moments. A movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once exploded online because it felt creatively unhinged in a sincere way. People connected with it emotionally while also sharing raccoon memes and clips of hot dog fingers. That movie somehow balanced existential despair, martial arts, googly eyes, and family trauma, which sounds fake when you say it out loud. But internet culture amplified its emotional resonance because audiences could instantly share reactions, interpretations, fan art, and memes together in real time. Modern fandom is participatory, and participation is probably the biggest difference overall. Older cult fandom often involved exclusivity. You had to seek movies out. There was almost a gatekeeping ritual involved. Somebody had to hand you the sacred DVD copy of Eraserhead, like they were recruiting you into a secret society. Now, discovery is immediate. A 20-second clip can create millions of new fans overnight. That accessibility is great in many ways, but it also changes fandom behavior. Modern internet culture consumes media extremely fast. A movie can trend massively for 2 weeks and then vanish from the conversation entirely. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether something is becoming a genuine cult classic or just experiencing temporary meme inflation. Because cult classics traditionally had staying power. They survived through repeated viewings and community devotion over years. Internet culture sometimes creates temporary obsession cycles instead. We're basically watching audiences speedrun cultural reevaluation. The fact is that critics have less control over this process than ever before. There was a time when critical consensus strongly shaped long-term reputation. Now, audiences can collectively rebel against critics in real time. Sometimes that's good. Critics absolutely miss things, but sometimes audiences also decide a movie is underrated approximately 17 minutes after release, which is not enough time for anyone to process anything emotionally. The word underrated online has almost no meaning anymore. Every movie is simultaneously overrated, underrated, secretly genius, secretly terrible, and misunderstood by modern audiences. And yet, despite all that chaos, internet culture has genuinely preserved and revived appreciation for tons of great movies that might otherwise have faded away. That part is genuinely cool. Online communities keep film history alive in ways traditional media never could. YouTube essays, TikTok film analysis, podcasts, fan edits, and streaming accessibility all help younger audiences discover old films constantly. Somebody watches Blade Runner for the first time every single day because the internet convinced them to. Which means cult cinema is no longer limited by geography, physical media, or studio support. Audiences themselves now function as distributors, archivists, marketers, and critics simultaneously, which is honestly kind of terrifying when you remember that the internet also made Minions memes unavoidable for like 7 straight years. But still, there's something genuinely exciting about how democratic modern cult fandom became. The gatekeepers matter less. Audiences have more power than ever to rescue overlooked movies or reinterpret older ones through new perspectives. Sometimes the internet turns movies into nonsense. Sometimes it creates ironic fandoms so powerful that studio executives lose contact with reality. Sometimes it reduces complex films into motivational Sigma edits, but it also creates community. It keeps forgotten movies alive. It encourages reevaluation. It gives strange little films second chances. That feels very appropriate for cult classics specifically. These movies were always about passionate audiences finding meaning in unexpected places. The internet just turbocharged the process. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to spend the next 3 hours watching somebody explain why Speed Racer was secretly a masterpiece all along. And the worst part is, they might actually convince me. So what bad movie do you secretly love unironically? Sound off in the comments, and if you feel like leaving a like or subscribing to the channel, that would be fantastic.